Welcome to Level Up, the Career Playbook, or as I like to call it, How to Be Better at Your Job. This is the podcast where we cut through the noise and give you the real actionable tools to reach your career goals and thrive. Whether you're just starting out, climbing the ladder, or redefining your role, this is where we unpack the stories, the strategies, and the skills that make the difference. I am your host, Brian Bell, and I am thankful and honored to everyone listening and watching wherever you are in the world today. One quick favor before we get started that would tremendously help. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe. Like it now. I promise you're going to like this video, but at least subscribe to the channel. It'll help out a lot with the algorithm. I appreciate you very much. Okay, let's get real today. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, it's under attack. We're watching companies scale back, defund, or completely eliminate DEI programs left and right. Supreme Court rulings, political pressure, and economic shifts have all led to one thing: uncertainty. Employees are left wondering, does this still matter? Should I still speak up? Am I on my own here? But today's guest, she's still in the fight. Aisha DeBerry, Juris Doctor JD, is a DEI strategist, author, speaker, and facilitator who has spent her career making inclusion the solution, not just a corporate checkbox. While others pull back, she keeps showing up. Today, we're going to break down some of the hard truths about what's really happening in the DEI world right now, how to navigate this shifting landscape without losing momentum, why inclusion is still a business advantage, even if companies are ignoring it, and how you can keep pushing for equity in your career, whether your company's on board or not. This is the conversation that needs to happen, especially in the times we're in now. So let's get into it. Aisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I am thankful you're here. Obviously, like we know, the times that we're in right now, it's very timely. And I imagine, like we talked prior to hitting record, you're very busy right now. And there's some obvious reasons for that. And so we'll get into it. But I appreciate you taking out the amount of time that you have in your day to talk to me for a little bit.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited. We talked kind of offline. And so I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Amazing. Okay. Now, before we get started and get into the questions, let's start with, who are you? Why the hell did I say I'm going to have Aisha DeBerry on here? A mutual friend connected us, but there's a reason why we immediately connected. I'm like, I need you on the podcast. Who are you? Tell me a little bit more about how you became who you are right now.
Absolutely. I always like to say I am a sister of the South. I am a woman who loves unconditionally, but sometimes that can be misunderstood. I am the daughter of a civil rights activist. I am the daughter of a community organizer. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, raised in Jackson, Mississippi. I live now here in Atlanta. And I have kind of taken this journey because I like to say I didn't find DEI or any of those things. It kind of found me because it was just in my DNA. I mean, it's just been in my DNA. If you know anything about Memphis, you know anything about Mississippi, you don't have to go back far to kind of know the wonderful people like Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, that were huge advocates for not just women around race and people of color, but immigrants and farmers and women and the underrepresented and the poor. And so that has always just been in me and led me to major in economics because I wanted to learn a little bit about money and how that ran. Did that in Boston for a stint, and then went on to law school and really found passion around juvenile work, essay and gender misconduct, immigration law, and things of that nature. And then landed here because of love in Atlanta and really began to do a lot of inclusion and equity work in the higher education space, in private industry, in government, personally as an entrepreneur. And so that's just kind of been all the way in me. And I think it's because of where I've come from and who I am a product of, which is my mom and dad, of course.
It totally makes sense. My mom is currently in Memphis right now. Mm-hmm. She's from that area, Somerville, Tennessee. I understand the area, but I want to talk a little bit more deeply really quick before we get into the questions as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned your upbringing a little bit, but are there just some 2 or 3 moments that really stick to the back of your mind of, even as a kid, or maybe it's in high school or college, there's just these 2 or 3 moments. I know that you went to law school. I know that you went and did your economics degree. Are there more impactful moments than not that stick in the back of your mind of that really helps you be who you are right now?
Oh, yeah. My mom was always kind of this neighborhood advocate. And so my father for many years was the county administrator. And so right across from his office was our county jail. And so, those folks would get out from time to time and they were looking for stuff to do. They were just looking for work, right? And so my mom was very open to having them clean up the neighborhood or clean out houses or clean cars before that was kind of a unionized or organized thing that we know it to be now, or programs that we know. She was just doing it out of the kindness of her heart because she recognized that we should not be seen as the circumstances we've been in or the actions we have taken. So I saw that very early. And, some folks in my neighborhood would be looking at us all kind of crazy, like, what in the world? Why is this person that just got out, cleaning our neighborhood? But that's where I began to have a relationship with folks all over, whether you were the high echelon or you had just been released with your bag behind you, right? The other thing is my name is Aisha DeBerry. When I was in school, I would just clench because I knew that my teachers were going to mispronounce my name. I knew it. I knew it was coming. It was going to be Alicia, Aisha. It was going to be, I'm just going to skip over your name, sis, because I don't know it. And so that made me feel not seen. And so I knew how that felt at a very young age of what it's like to not see that name tag on the carousel when you go to Disney Worlds or the events, right? So I knew that I had that experience, but then I would see my mom still loving over here. So that's where I kind of bridge this gap between I can make people seen because I know what it feels on a very small elementary scale, right? But I still remember that to this day, which means that that's impactful. If I am 40 plus, y'all don't even know my age, but if I'm 40 plus now and I'm still thinking about something in third grade, that had an impact on me.
Absolutely.
And those really were some moments that kind of began to gel what I talk about and think about today.
I will want to say thank you, Mom, for that, for the impact, right? Because
Yeah.
third grade, and that's still, holding that string today. And I totally understand. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Before we get into our full discussion,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask the basic question especially for listeners that haven't been paying attention or maybe they're not from the U.S. What is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion? Why is that the talk of the town right now? Why does that seem like that's on every news channel? Even today, as I was getting ready to talk to you and I was just checking out the script, I saw it flash up on my news. Google just announced today they're getting rid of their DEI targets.
Yeah.
Why is this everywhere, and what does that mean, and what is DEI in the beginning?
Absolutely. I think, well, first, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some say DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Some say DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so I think it's important when we even open up this discussion is that we know what the terms mean. Let's start there. And then from there, understanding what is it all about. And at the baseline of DEI, or however you have heard it potentially, is that we are giving opportunities for all. We all come from different places and spaces. We all have different journeys. We all have different ways of living. And so the term really has grown out of affirmative action, equal opportunity employment. These are all laws or ordinances or codes or executive orders that were created here in the United States to ensure that all folks had an opportunity to a thriving workplace in particular. Now that has bled over into other places and spaces, into nonprofits, into your churches and spiritual places of worship. And so it's a very broad term, but at the end of the day, it is all about ensuring that all of us have an opportunity to thrive, be it in our homes, be it in our schools, be it in our workplace. Where primarily you're hearing it right now in the workplace, of course, because it is coming down from the federal government, which has entire control, if you will, over federal agencies. So that is why it is a hot topic. Our current administration does not agree with those terms and has set forth executive orders as such. However, what I'd like to say is most of us are doing DEI work. We just have some leaders out here, right, that are naming it and claiming it. But if you are ensuring that someone who is in a wheelchair has a ramp, possibly from where you work, or if you're translating for someone, you may not know how to exactly translate, but you're trying to help them out because they're ordering something on the fast food menu. If you are making sure that someone knows where their nearest church is, they just moved to the neighborhood and they don't know where their next Methodist church is and they want to attend, you're doing that work, right? You are ensuring that someone is heard and seen and valued and making sure that they can thrive in their space and place.
Thank you for that. That was actually one of the best explanations I've ever heard. And I probably am a news junkie way more than I should be. And I normally hear blah, 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 and I think people tune out. But when you say it that way of if somebody's in a wheelchair and they need accessibility, that is the work. And it's not this, for some reason, I think DEI is vilified into you're taking away from somebody else. And DEI, what your definition made it sound like we're adding more people to the party, not taking somebody out.
Absolutely. It's inclusion. It's that third grader who has a teacher that comes in and says, her name is Aisha, so let me phonetically write it for you so that when you pronounce her name the next time, you get it right. That's DEI work, right? That would have changed me. I wouldn't have had this story today. I might not even be doing what I'm doing today. I might be making a ton of money somewhere, being a big time stockbroker when I was slated to do that, in college. But because of that experience, I mean, honestly, Brian, that may not have taken me to this trajectory today, but for not having someone in the space doing that work that's so small. Yeah. It's so small, but it's so impactful. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the protesting, thinking about the larger things that just seem so beyond. But all of us, I would argue that every single one of us are doing something to make someone included. Now, I'm not saying they're making everybody included. Let me be real. But they are doing something, right? And so that's why it's so important for us to put words and definitions and examples to the thing so you don't get caught up in the polarization or really just overwhelmed with these words that you may not even know necessarily what they mean.
Yeah. Everybody at some point is doing DEI. I actually led DEI at one of my previous companies, and DEI is for everyone was kind of my tagline because it really is, and it shouldn't be controversial. But let's talk about work. Let's talk about work and some of the uncomfortable truths at work.
Yeah.
Me being in HR, we talk about biases. We know biases exist. Ignoring it, putting your head in the sand is not going to make it go away. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about what's really happening. Okay, so you've worked in corporate, you worked in the public world. What are some biases that you've seen people avoid talking about? And I think some of this DI work, to make sure we're all included, is addressing some of the things that we've been kind of overlooking, and one of those being biases. What are you seeing as far as biases that we're not really talking about?
One of the main things that makes me think about this is the fact of the matter is we like being with people that look like us.
All of us.
Or think like us. I mean, I'm included. Hello? I mean, I'm not excluded for that conversation. So I'm huge on calling a thing a thing. Okay? All right. I like hanging out with other Black women. Here we go. All right. Surprise.
Oh, no.
Surprise. Okay? Because I am not in any way, as a DEI practitioner, saying and trying to shove down your throat, I want you to get along with everyone. I want you to talk to everyone every day, all day. No, I'm not saying that. But this is why I'm bringing that up. When you call a thing, then you can do something different. But if you don't call the thing a thing and be honest and truthful with yourself, then you can't really see where your biases lie. If I know, like I said, that I enjoy being with folks that look like me and think like me, I can start to think about if someone's in this space who doesn't look like me, who doesn't think like me. Potentially they could be thinking something else. Maybe I need to engage in conversation with that person so I can learn something different. Also, you can do that by action when you're pushing your bias. Because again, once you know that thing, again, and I say this to folks all the time, I am not telling you to go and read 25 books on how to get along with Black people in the workplace, or how to get along with Asian people in the workplace. What I am asking you to do is take something that you already do and then switch it up a little bit. Let's say you like doing a 5K, but you always tend to do a 5K in your neighborhood, in your affluent neighborhood, or maybe you're not affluent neighborhood. Why don't you do a 5K somewhere else in another part of the section of
Let me interrupt you, but why? I'm comfortable with the route that I'm running in my 5K. I know the ups and the downs, the hills, left and rights. I got it in the back of my mind. It's easier. Why would I switch it up then if I got my thing down?
Right, right. Very good question. You'll learn and gain so much that you never thought about, right? It's almost about learning, like how at first you're scared to speak up or you're scared to swim. Next thing you know, you start learning swimming and you just like all over the place having the best time of your life. It's so enriching. It's so enriching. Who the heck wants to eat the same meal every day? Tell the truth. Do you really want to eat salad every single day? Do you, Brian?
I mean, I don't eat salad to begin with, but
Sometimes you want
heck no to me.
Sometimes you want a potato. So you want a little bit of variety. That's the same thing that holds true to us. Yeah, we know what potatoes taste like. We've gotten that in the groove. But man, when we try a little steak with that, oh my gosh, that has opened up another opportunity. It doesn't mean you have steak every day, but now you know about steak and you know it tastes good. And so it's again, but if you call a thing and say, you know what, eating salad every day is boring. I need to try something else. Or I know I like doing this 5K all the time, but let me try something else. Oh my God. And next thing you know, it has opened up an opportunity. I'll even take it another step further. That's not even as engaging. Let's say you give money to an organization. You're always giving money to this organization. Explore more about what that organization is doing. Who are they helping? Are they helping just a certain group that you particularly like? If that's the case, try another organization. Try something small. Try something local. Yes. Your company tends to list a whole different array of companies. I always say you can stay in your lane and do something different. You can stay. Let me backtrack. You can stay on the highway and change the lane.
Yeah.
You're still on the highway. You're still going 85. I'm here in Atlanta, but you just switch it up a little bit, and you can always revert back to that. But again, I am huge on giving examples because when you hear the word bias, it's like paralyzed. People freeze. You're accusing me. You're saying I'm bad. You're saying I'm this ism or that ism. And so we have a nature as human beings to protect ourselves, to make sure that we're safe. And when I'm coming against you with the word bias, because you've heard it's a negative word, you're going to protect yourself and retreat. But if I open it up to an example and say, tell me a little bit about X. Tell me a little bit about Z. And then I can begin to open up the conversation and we can kind of undress and unpack. I'll say unpack some of that stuff. But that bias, I'll go back to. What makes it hard is us not really checking ourselves and being honest with ourselves of where we are and who we are.
Yeah. Okay, let's stick to work. And one of the places where I think biases can show up that have the most effect on people is our managers. They have the ability to hire, obviously the ability to fire, performance reviews and promotions and getting more pay. It's all comes through their manager. How can we help managers get past feeling uncomfortable about thinking about they might have bias, I have bias, we all have it. How do we get them past that discomfort and start making real progress there? Is there certain things that we can help our managers with?
Absolutely. Have conversations. I started at the baseline with knowing thyself. Many of our managers today they are just trying to make it, right? They are getting things from the top down, telling them what to do. And then they have to somehow share that information to those beneath them, right? So it's bottled up because there's complaints from the bottom up and there's top down pressure. So they're being sandwiched in between. And there's a lot of skill set that many managers don't even have time to gain because they're working around the clock. They're just trying to keep it together because they are the bridge, if you will. And so I start very simply with conversation. How can you begin to get to know your teammates? Now, I know it's going to be difficult if you have a team of 5,000, across the globe or the 3,000s of the world. But, if you have a fairly manageable team, start having conversations. People remember when you remember a hard name, you're able to pronounce their name correctly. People remember when your grandmother passed away and you mentioned that. People remember when you had a car accident and you broke your leg and you had to kind of limp to work every day and you said, "Are you doing okay?" Maya Angelou, we talk about this all the time. People will not understand what you did, but they will understand how you made them feel. And I'm paraphrasing. And so you will be amazed. I have actually seen the numbers because we have tried this at places and spaces of just what conversations have done. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, the work is still going to get done. Now, it may be done slow. It may be done fast. It may be done by someone who has to be replaced because they have to go. But the work is still going to get done at the end of the day. But wouldn't it be so much greater if the work is done productively, efficiently, in a thriving way?
With some
People,
fun to it, like
and God, guys, don't even do it fun
I
and
bet.
make it fun, but that comes from conversation and people will begin to feel loyal to you. You remembered my name. You remembered how to pronounce my name, and whatever the accent is, I will work maybe 10 steps harder than I normally would before because you got that one encounter.
Yep.
Saying as a manager, you got time to be talking all day because you got work to do. But that is a skill set that is very important, not just today, because we hear about millennials. All generations want that. Baby boomers, Gen Xers, we all want to feel seen and valued. It is very hard for me to believe that people do not want that.
We
I
all do. We're humans. I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay, conversations, but something that specifically, are you saying I'm a manager or an individual contributor? But let's just talk about managers. Are you saying manager A, go and intentionally say, I'm going to put 10 minutes on calendar of somebody that I usually don't talk to, just catch up? Or when you say conversation, maybe I'm making it too formal, but what does that look like for somebody if they wanted to go and try to expand their horizons?
Yeah, that's very tactical. And I appreciate that. So let's say you're a manager and first you need to know your team, right? So if your team is a team of introverts, and you can get that information from, one of your kind of influencers in the group and say, this is a bunch of introverts. So maybe having 10 minutes on the clock is going to stress everyone out. Maybe it is more in an open forum, like in a chat room or a Teams where people can kind of chime in via text. And you just ask the question, Tell me about your favorite time this weekend. It seems like a real weird icebreaker, but that information that you see in the chat, jot it down. Brian said he loves roller coasters, so he went to Six Flags this weekend. So the next time I see Brian or have some type of interaction with him, I may or may not have it. But if that opportunity presents itself, I can say, Brian, I did roller coasters this last weekend. I thought of you when you put that in the chat. So that's an introvert side, right? But if it's people that you're meeting and you know that they're more extroverted, introverted, again, you need to start observing as a manager, just observing. And then you can have that one-on-one and put 10 minutes, but indicate on the calendar just the time to chat. Because I know some environments may not be as non-hostile. So people may be on edge, but just want to chat to get to know you a little bit better and kind of popcorn it around. Don't make it one set day. You're going down the list. People think they're getting ready to get fired, but observe your group, know your audience. And if you don't know it, ask your influencers in the group and then begin to gauge the best way to converse. Maybe it's in a group setting. Maybe it's one-on-one. Maybe it's at a company party. Maybe there's so many things, right? But those
just have it, but you don't have to be so rigid about it. But I liked your point of even in like the team Slack or in text message or a group chat where it's not as awkward. I had another boss that before every one of our team meetings, there's a site on Google, I think you can chat GPT now, where there was always like that opener, like thought-provoking question. And so we would all go around the room and it was something that got everybody speaking more about their personal insights. And so that was also a really good way for us to start knowing, but good call out. It doesn't have to be one specific way, just however it feels natural to do it based on your team.
Yeah, and when you're doing it, have intention, because a lot of people don't like icebreakers because it's just like, what is this? What is this doing? I mean, sometimes I don't even like icebreakers, but be intentional with it. Why are you doing the icebreaker? Are you choosing this particular day for you to be more vulnerable with the group? And so asking a more posing question that brings out vulnerability because you found that the team is very rigid and they don't know you. Or do you generally just want to know kind of basic information about them so you can further have a conversation down the road? Be strategic about it. I don't want to, because I know this is a podcast and people kind of pick up as they go. I don't want you to be haphazard with that. I don't want you just throwing out an icebreaker that does not have some intention behind it. Think about what would you like to know that you think will be better for your team? But again, you can ask some of your colleagues or you can ask some people on the team that are willing to share to help you along the way.
Speaking of introverts, what advice would you give for people, especially introverts, that you see or experience bias but you're like, I don't want to speak up. I'm going to rock the boat. I don't feel comfortable. How do we handle those situations where you see something, and I know they say see something, say something, but even I'm scared to speak up sometimes. Like, am I going to get fired? How do you deal with that?
So I'm assuming as you're saying, if you are an introvert yourself.
Right. And
Yes.
if you're, or just uncomfortable, you don't even have to be an introvert, but you experience bias and you don't feel like you can speak up. You don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah, you're going to get so tired of hearing me say this conversation. But when I used to do essay and gender misconduct work, there was a great organization called Green Dot. I think they're still around, not the financial company, but it is a company around this idea that if you want an environment to change, it starts from every small act. And there's a couple of mantras that they have that I've adopted, not all of them, so I'm paraphrasing. But there's just kind of this, if you see an act, you're direct, you speak up, you say what it is, you call it out, boom, it happens. There is a delay where you decide to say it later based on the circumstance that you are in or the environment that you know to be true for you. Or you delegate based on the hierarchy of things of who you are, or tenure. It could be whatever that identity is that you may not feel comfortable in this kind of quote unquote majority space, whatever that majority space is. So what does that look like? Again, if you're direct and you're in the moment and someone says something off color or there's a bias that's very clear that makes you feel uncomfortable, of course, you would just kind of speak up in that space because you feel comfortable to do that and call that thing a thing and then begin to rechannel the conversation. Most of us don't feel comfortable doing that. And so delaying, right? If you feel comfortable enough, maybe you send that person an email or a Slack message. Or, you just decide and navigate how you're going to delay and make this happen. The other piece is delegate. If you know that there's a person that's an influencer in the space or in the room or has influence or power, quote unquote, and you have built a relationship with them because you've been communicating on some type of level, potentially, that person can speak up for you after you've had a conversation with them. Those are not an exhaustive list, but I tend to go down those 3Ds to give people an idea of what to do. For example, let's say that there's a company lunch and every single time, and again, I'm making this very low level, but we can always build from there. There's a lunch and there's all red meat. There's always red meat. There's never any other options. There might be a little vegetable here or there, but there's really no consideration for those who are vegan or have religious reasons why they cannot eat red meat. And you just got there. You don't really want to say anything. But if you feel direct, you'll pull whoever is organizing the food on the side and say something. Or you can send an email later and just ask, hey, to your manager, hey, does anyone know who coordinated the food on Tuesday? I just want to send an email or just say to you as well that I cannot eat that type of food.
Let me interrupt there because what would that email look like? I think that, first of all, the delegation part, that actually never crossed my mind. So that's, even for myself, very helpful. But can you give me an example of, in the moment, if you're direct or if you're going to delay or if you're going to go and delegate, in either case, what does a message look like that? Because people are like, oh my God, am I going to get in trouble? Is that too mean or whatever? Are there specific words or a specific style that you would suggest?
Yeah, I always like to use the sandwich method. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but I'm sure you have. You start with something positive, you get to the point, and then you close it with something positive. Some people don't like that style. I particularly like it. It's worked for me, and I've shared with others it's worked for them. So say, for instance, if you're direct, you see the person kind of setting up the food. They look like the coordinator. Hi, Brian, are you the person that, sets up the food? And let's say it's you. And you say, wow, I really appreciate this spread. There's always a spread that's, here. And I know that's really beneficial for us because we work late hours. But I am a vegetarian. I would love to help you or if you have options that you can consider next time for myself, because I'm sure I'm probably not the only one, but I didn't want to just speak up about it. And again, thanks again for having this spread for us. The same in an email, you would just, either let the manager know. And again, if you feel the environment's kind of strange, you can say to the manager, do you mind carrying this forward? Not really mentioning me, please, but could you just kind of mention this anonymously that this is something that I observed? And this is something you can do whether you don't eat the meat or not. Again, if you get outside of yourself, right, and we call a thing, we'll begin to start seeing our eyes open and go, wow, this is all red meat. I mean, we can vegetarians or gluten free or whatever the case may be. We're not considering that. Delegating is that piece that I just shared, right? That delay was sending the email potentially to the human resources person or your manager. The delegating is asking that human resources manager or person of influence. They can be an individual contributor to speak up on that particular incident.
Okay. It's super helpful because if I am only thinking about myself, I think the real key part here was it doesn't have to be about biases against you. Let's start thinking about the person to the right or to the left of you. And I was just going down my brain. There was a previous company where somebody realized, wait, what if your vision, your eyesight's not that good? Our website is horrible for them. And they had perfect 20/20 vision, and it wasn't even about them. So speaking up for other people, I think is the other way to make sure that happens. So that delegation I really like.
Yes. And these are all building blocks, Brian. So remember, if I'm doing the 5K in another neighborhood, I'm gaining information that I didn't even know that I can transfer over to the workplace, right? So if I'm having this vibrant experience, again, I don't have to do a million 5Ks over here, just one. I can learn something new that I can apply back to the workplace that may not even pertain to me, but something that I've heard, seen, listened to, gained knowledge around, became aware.
Yeah. Okay, let's take the focus. We were talking about managers and what they can do. I want to talk about me or I for the person that's listening for themselves, especially for women and people of color or any kind of protected group, let's just say.
Yeah.
How could women, especially and people of color, how do they empower themselves to like fully show up? I know companies are like, we want you to be your full self. And even myself, I'm like, I'm not going to bring my full self because I don't know. Should we be bringing our full self? I mean, if we should, how do we empower ourselves to fully show up and thrive?
Yeah, that bring your authentic self to work. Y'all pray for me. I'm a Southern girl. I just shoot it straight. Bring your professional authentic self to work. You know y'all don't want to see me. You don't want listen. You can see me down, okay? But I'm not bringing my authentic self because my authentic self may be something that's true to me, right? And also something that I just don't want to show if I'm really authentic, right? So I like to say, bring your professional authentic self to work. So if you know that the values of that company are again, I'm very general here. You build up. Everyone wears blue at this company. That is just the thing. Why are you showing up in pink? You saw that the company wears blue. Now you can wear blue, but you wear different variations of that shows you, that expresses you, right? And so let me break that down some. We are now in a place, especially if you're in a place of privilege. This is not all folks who can, just interview for a job and they have plenty of time to go through interviews and the entire process. So I am speaking to a sect. I want to be very clear. But when you are going through an interview process, you should be asking those questions. What is the culture like here? What is the dress? How do people converse with each other? What are the expectations? Do you have telework? Are you remote? Are you always subject to change? Are you a changing environment? Are you a dynamic team? Are you very data driven? Are you more qualitative? Like ChatGPT is wonderful, you all. You can begin to draft what kind of questions should I ask this specific company based on their mission, vision, and values. Yeah. So that way, you know way ahead of time whether you have to take the job because of circumstances or not, how to begin to bring that professionalism and your professional self to work. Now, that's one piece. Now, in terms of feeling like you can do that, because that's a journey in itself, I am a huge component, and we may talk about this later, of finding mentors and also finding circles of influence. I have what's called a sister circle, and it is a bunch of just wonderful women from all places, backgrounds, 10 years in work, some retired, some just starting, and they pour into me. And so that kind of fills my cup. So when I get to work and I'm waiting for that additional pour from my manager, my colleagues, and things like that, I've already done some of that work, right? So when I show up, I feel very comfortable now. And this has been a journey. I feel very comfortable showing who I am. Not all of me now. And no one wants to see that. And no one should give all of that at work, right? but showing myself true. And if I feel like I'm struggling with that, I can go back to that sister circle for some engagement.
That is huge, where I think a lot of people are waiting for the job to pour their entire cup, to give them everything and be doing this miraculous work that they're not getting anywhere else in their everyday lives, but somehow work is supposed to be the place where they get all this. And to your point, it's do not expect all of that from work. Go and find it on your own. Now, maybe there are ERGs where you can separately do that, of course.
Absolutely.
But for you, you're saying, I have a group completely outside of that actually is filling my cup. So when I go to work, I'm not worried about it. And so I'm not pushing on something that I might not get.
Yes, absolutely. And, let me be clear. Companies should value that work, right? They should value making sure that you're included. By God, I call myself the inclusion strategist. So I am big on that and making sure that leadership keeps that top of mind. However, there is some responsibility on ourselves. And maybe this is just where I am in my stage of life. I may not have said this in my earlier part of my career. My expectations may have been for the company to do all that. But what I have learned is that I need a holistic team. I need a 360. I need people at home. If I don't have them at home, I need people in organizations and I need people at work because we know we spend the majority of our time at work. And to your point, there may be groups like that I'm speaking of at work, like an employee resource group or a business resource group. I'm not saying you have to have a ton of people around you. It might be one, it might be two, but you do need a holistic approach when we're talking about showing up in the workplace, feeling authentic, feeling empowered to be who you are.
So you are able to, let's say you now are feeling good about bringing yourself to work, the professional self. A lot of that is so you have the confidence to be able to do your job. And a lot of the things that we do at work, it's kind of a game, it's politics.
Yeah.
You have to influence, you have to build credibility. What do you think are some tangible ways that we can actually start building influence and start building credibility without always having to also feel like I'm always proving myself, but I need to be able to play the game? Does that make sense of how can we build that up?
Absolutely. If you know anything about me, I can talk all day. I'm qualitative. I'm a feeler. I want to hug you. I'll just, cry on my shoulder. Let's do the storytelling, all of that. But there was a time when I was working for a company that was all data driven. They were engineers, project managers. They didn't want a story or a telling. Okay. They looked at the numbers and the numbers is what spoke to them. And so I spent time on my own learning more about data, learning more how to tell my story in a data way. Now, that didn't mean I wasn't still authentic to myself. We still got some storytelling in, but I was able to begin to learn how to speak that language. That's just the same. When I studied in Madrid years and years ago, naively, I thought, could you show up to Madrid and start speaking English? And we are well on our way. They speak English there. And I was pleasantly surprised in the airport to see that no one spoke it. Whether they did or not, they thought probably it was disrespectful, even if they did. But once I started learning just a few words, that opened up my door to so many opportunities. So I translate that over to when I was working for this company. I would do a little data talk. Some of my storytelling stuff around DEI was data. This is what the data is saying. These are the numbers. These are the statistics. And I had some people helping me out, some colleagues and such. Next thing I know, the door has been opened to several people. And now I can start telling the stories. Now I can start telling you about the experiences that people are having that I am having that are bias related or make me uncomfortable. But I couldn't get there until I was able to speak the language a little bit. I'm not saying leave again all your stuff at the door and assimilate. That is not me. That is not my ministry at all. But what I am saying is if you're walking, again, you're doing your research. If you're walking into a company, what are their values? Are they data oriented? Are they team oriented? Are they one-on-one independent contributors do the thing? Tons of just contractors. Are they global? Are they local? Are there values around spirituality and religion? Think about those things and then just get a little piece of it. If that's not really necessarily your thing, get a little piece of that, speak that language, and then that will begin to open up the door. The other thing I like to say to people, especially when they feel kind of uncomfortable in spaces, but all the leaders are there. Let's say it's a huge town meeting and all the leaders are there and you're like, oh my God, I'm not gonna just speak up and start saying stuff. Asking questions. Always being that person to ask questions. Leadership loves when you ask questions, even if it's just the most basic question you probably ever thought of in your mind. They know, we know Aisha's going to ask a
And there's
question.
probably 20 other people that wanted to ask that question, but were too scared anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great way to kind of deflect off of you because you don't want all the attention. It's like you're asking that person that question and you just kind of, shuffle over, into non-existence, if you will, because you're terrified. But if you ask those questions, you will be alarmed how many people kind of take you into the fold because you're seen as the one that's inquisitive. So there's several things that you can do.
That's a good call out. But questions, just don't feel scared to do it. But that's how you're right, though. You can actually get more credibility because you become the curious one, or, oh, he actually cares. Or before you go into the room, do just a couple minutes of, like you said, of intelligence to learn the language, to learn what they're working on. It doesn't take a lot to really get some of that information for people to be like, okay, now I'm going to open the doors for you because you've shown that you care. Or
and once that door is open, take advantage. Use that platform to begin to build some trust. Again, I'm not saying that, if this person plays golf, you can start playing golf too. No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is start engaging and saying, hey, Brian, now that you notice that I've been on the chat all the time asking questions or whatever the case may be, because I know Brian is the influencer. I know every time the CEO talks, he mentions Brian, or the manager talks, he mentions Brian. So clearly in my head, that's saying, you're an influencer. I can say to you, Brian, what do you think I should be doing here? I really want to move up in the next 5 years. Do you have any advice about how to do that? Or it seems like, every time that there is a promotion that happens, I'm not being considered. What is that about? Can you help me understand that? That's when you begin to ask the questions, and some of them tough questions, not just, how can I, make it to the next position, but why is it that I'm being overlooked, or why is it that we're not having X, Y, and Z? That's when you begin to have some of those, kind of quote unquote uncomfortable conversations.
That's the huge one because me being in HR, and I think you hear it all the time, where I think people are waiting for the manager to see them or somebody to magically come and to say, you're the magic one.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to speak up for yourself and ask the question that's maybe uncomfortable because you might get an answer you don't want to hear. Well, actually, Brian, your attitude sucks. You blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you have to ask those questions.
Yes.
And unless you have just the most draconian, diabolical leader, they're going to be open to you as long as you ask the right way.
Yes.
One more question digging here. And I know the answer, but I want to make sure that the people watching or listening understand.
Yeah.
Mentors and sponsors, I think that they are two different things. But when we're talking about making influence and having credibility and people speaking your name in rooms when you're not there, walk me through why people, especially if you're a woman or a person of color, or just anybody in general, should have a mentor versus what is a sponsor, what's the difference, and why do you need both of those really to actually level up and make some difference?
Sure. I mean, I think I'll start first just in terms of navigating the workplace in general. I don't know how colleges are doing. I need to spend some more time in the college environment, but there's not a lot of, and don't come for me, but there's not a lot of pedagogy around how to navigate the workplace in this new world. We're just kind of figuring it out as we go. I mean, I know there's organizations like SHRM that give great information of just how to navigate a culture and things of that nature, but it's not kind of this innate skill of how to show up for work and how to move around. And the reason, in my opinion, outside of some of the privilege that has been granted to some and maybe not others, is some of these folks that are doing really well have had both mentors and sponsors. And so I love this question because there is a difference between the two. I liken mentors to be like your GPS. They guide you to the place you want to go. And they help you think about where you want to go, but they guide you. They keep you, they say, turn left, turn right, stop, don't go there, to make it to the place where you want to be. And sponsors are like the ideal usher maitre d' at an event. They open up the door for you, right? They guide you to your seat, to the table. They tell you all the people that are at the table. They make sure you know how to show up. And so sponsors really take it a next step. Mentors are just there to give you advice, to help you, just to kind of see your successes, to cheer you on. But those sponsors really make sure that you are where you need to be in your sphere of influence, wherever you're trying to go. They're constantly, whether you're there or not, they're in the space saying, when we get ready to look for this next board member for the nonprofit advisory board, we really should be considering Brian. Our board is not diverse at all. We don't have any young folks. We don't have any new thought here. Brian needs to be the one. And we all know that Aisha, who's on the board, whatever she says goes. So that would be me being a sponsor for you.
There's a billion programs and ways to find a mentor. I've talked about that in literally every one of my podcast episodes, where the people that have thrived, they have a great mentor, either just by default, somebody just took them under the wing, or you can go ask. How do you get a sponsor? Because that sounds amazing, because you need that somebody that's talking in those rooms and places that you couldn't even imagine. How do I get a sponsor? Because I think I've always talked about mentorship, but never sponsorship.
I think it's very similar. I think it can happen twofold, right? Some of it, of course, happens organically. If you are out being great and you are asking the questions at the town hall meetings, if you are showing up, even pushing the envelope a little bit, asking those questions about the lunch, if you are doing potentially extra projects that are not being asked of you, that potentially the C-suite, or if you're in that corporate space, they know that you were charged with that. When it comes to that C-suite, and I'm just speaking in the corporate vernacular, and I'm serving on a board, because more likely than not, I'm serving on 20 of them because I am in the C-suite, I'm going to think of the person that was chatting in the chat. I'm going to do that. So organically, that can happen. But also, you can do the same route as a mentor, but you say to them, I'm looking for a sponsor. I'm not looking for a mentor. And let me give you the definition of both. And let me tell you why I think you will be an excellent sponsor and not a mentor for me. Because I have seen you, I've seen you sitting on the boards, and that is somewhere I want to go, because I want to eventually be an executive director of a board. Or I have seen you support the campaign of this particular individual, and I eventually want to run for office. So that being very, again, communication, being very clear on what you need. Because like you said, it's easy to just say, mentor, I want you to be my mentor. I want you to be my mentor. But really have a strategy behind why you want this person to sponsor you. What are you using their time for, so that they're well equipped and know?
So be visible, and then be very direct and clear when you're asking, either for a mentor or for a sponsor.
Yes.
But as crazy as this sounds, I never once thought I could just go be direct and say, hey, Steve, I'm looking for you to be my mentor. I'm looking for a mentor, and here's why. It feels easier to ask for it as a mentor, but a sponsor is just as important. So that's really good advice and really good to remember.
And to add to that, if someone's like, whoa, wait, that's a lot. You're asking to be a sponsor or a mentor. You can say, is there someone that you would recommend?
Yeah.
Based on what you know about me, I can show you my resume. I can give you a little bit more information if you need that. But they should know by this point, right? You've done a little something. But let them know that. Listen, I know you're extremely busy. I know you have a lot of obligation, but I am looking for someone. So if it's not you, or you don't have the time right now, is there someone that you would recommend? Or is there an organization that I should potentially join that you have sponsored or helped out that you think would just be good for me to meet people? Because again, give them options. People want to help. They want to help, but they
really do. They really
do. But they may not have the time, right? But they may be able to channel, but you have to be clear on what you're asking for.
Okay. Let me change gears a little bit and talk. Let's get back to today.
Yeah.
With all the stuff that's going on, even with Google saying they're getting rid of their DEI targets, companies are pulling back on DEI, either efforts, they're cutting their entire programs. As just little O'Brien Bell, or just regular person employee, how should I be preparing for this new reality if I am a protected group, if I'm a woman, a person of color, should I be preparing in some way for this new reality?
I mean, I think that's such a good question. I think first it's good to become informed, right? I think for what you can take in, because there's a lot. There's a lot in media, there's a lot on social media, there's just a lot of chatter that's going around. So as best you can, and I know sometimes navigating and reading the law is kind of hard to hear, but put it in chat GBT. I've done it a couple of times. It seems fairly credible. But just kind of find out what the temperature is, where you are in your state, where you are in your city, where you are in your town. I know this may sound crazy, Brian, but the beautiful thing about what is happening now is people who were not paying attention to government class when they were in high school or college, you are getting your one-on-one as we speak right now.
True.
So knowing where your representatives stand, where your governor stands, where your city officials stand is a starting place. So that's first. And then the other thing is looking at your company, asking those questions of your manager or your vice president or whoever, or delegating it to, and asking, what does this look like now for me? I'm a part of an employee. Let's say Aisha's a part of the employee resource group. Does that mean this is going away? Ask those people what is happening. And then, of course, look federally of what's going on. Stay informed. I think it's very important to stay informed, because some of the things that we hear from someone else or maybe gauging from non-credible sources can begin to put us in a frenzy before we need to be in a frenzy. Now, let me be very clear. I am day in and day out in real time, and I'll be right after this call on something else. Things are happening and shifting and changing, but we have to be very clear on where our local folks stand, where our company stands, for us to make a sudden move, if you will. I don't think we should make anything out of excitement, but stay quiet and still for a moment and kind of do your information, gather your information, if you will.
That was my next question, and I think maybe you answered it, but I'm paying attention to the news, and it feels like I'm going to get fired just for having that title or for talking about DEI. If we find out that the company's like, we're getting rid of our DEI program, what strategy or what would you recommend for people at that point to push for DEI? Is it, let's just take a breather for right now and just be quiet and chill for a little bit? Like, where do I do?
Yeah, great question. I think, well, first, I just want to send love and light to so many DEI officers or anything of the like that have been doing work for so many years or just started their work and being let go for whatever the reasons are, be it executive order by federal standards or just companies deciding to take a shift. I think it's important to ask questions. Where does this stand for me? Where does this stand for our groups here? And if the answer is, listen, we've been told we got to get rid of all this stuff. We got to scrub it. We got to dismantle it. We have to do whatever it is, X, Y, and Z. That does not mean that the work stops, right? Because I think if we go back to the beginning of this podcast, DEI is not just for one person. It's for us all. So does that mean that you stop having conversations about making sure that people can understand the language based on, a company-wide webinar? Are we still having the conversation of making sure that we have some sort of accessibility? Are we still having the conversation around gender and gender identity and what that looks like in the workplace based on the data? There are other ways to explore what is happening in the workplace. Again, the words are not the work. The words describe the work, right? The words are not the work. And I know, right? Trust me, I'm a wordsmith. I'm a lawyer by trade. So I love me some words. And words affect me. And words do hurt. What was that saying? Sticks and stones may break my bone. But words do hurt sometimes.
They do.
But if we take a moment and take a breath and think about the work that we're doing, one can continue to do it in various ways and still get to a goal. Now, it may not be the goal that we intentionally planned, but it's still about making sure that all can thrive. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. We talked about this at the very beginning. We're already coming up on an hour, which is crazy.
I know.
We talked about it really quickly, but you mentioned the words and the work. And I think the words, there's this misconception about what DEI is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to your thoughts of what are these misconceptions? Why is this even a big deal? And is there a way that for folks that don't think that DEI is this big, bad, ugly thing, can we help shift the narrative to keep the momentum? Like, what are we missing? What's the misconception about the word DEI?
Yeah, I think systematically this nation has been built on systems that have worked for the majority and not for the quote unquote minority. And that's just fact. I mean, I think, again, if we call a thing, that is just the fact of the matter of all of it. I think the beginning of these systems have begun to open up the conversation that is not just affecting one identity, but it begins to broaden the conversation of how it affects many identities, if not all identities, in some place and space. I think fear is real. And I think there is a perception that if I share or give to someone else or offer an opportunity or resource, I myself will lose something. And it's not human nature for us to smile and hug and love losing something. Right. So it's imperative that we have to understand the systems that have been brought to this place and why we are here. I mean, if there weren't these kind of systems, then we wouldn't have developed ELC, or we would not have developed affirmative action, or we would not have developed DEI officers. But again, all of these positions are about making sure that all have access to the resources in order to thrive. Now, your question around, can we kind of turn this thing around? I think it's always here. I think what you're saying is, can we turn it around where it's more vocal? And I think it's going to just take time. It's going to take time to not give up and recognize what this thing really is. I mean, DEI, again, is about supporting folks. Do you not want a thriving workplace? Do you not want a thriving nonprofit?
It's
Do
for your
you?
mom. It's for your daughter. It's for
It's
your
for
sister.
everyone. It is for everyone. But I recognize when you're not informed, you can create your own narrative. And when you're not informed, that breeds fear. And fear creates this excitement and takes us off the goal in hand.
Yeah.
And so while it is very disappointing, concerning, quite honestly, just not right, we have to continue to do the work and speak up. All of us. Us DEI practitioners can't do it on our own. Now, we've been trained and we know what to expect and we know how to help and be subject matter experts for those who are in need. But we all have to do this. We all have to do this together. I'm not going to politicize this too much because I know we're talking about the workplace, but we're a young country. We are a fragile democracy. And so we have to understand that and realize that. And so there's no more time for, well, who's going to do it? Who's going to make it happen? Well, if they don't do it, we're lost all the way. No, we're all doing this together. Again, out of all of this, it is making me see the humanity in people. It is making people speak and talk and discuss, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's out of discuss sadness or happiness or joy. We are beginning to have a conversation that is not just on one person, y'all.
Yeah.
This is about all of us being engaged in this work. Whether you believe it or not, do the work around humanity and love. Whatever your baseline needs to be, right? But it's on all of us to really begin to kind of turn the tide, if you will, like you said, around D.
Yeah. We had the pendulum go all the way, at 2020. It's swung really, really fast all the other side. And so if you think about it that way, it always starts, it will come back, but it comes back especially faster if we all actually stand in and do that work. So
yes,
good call.
And not stand in fear. That's a tool. And so we must not be fearful. Think, your grandmothers, think of the ones who cannot speak up. Think for the ones who are not able to do that. we have a responsibility to do that. We really do.
Okay. We're already at an hour, but I want to wrap this up. I always have it's called the 2-minute drill. Just some quick questions, quick rapid answers. Just pull some things out of your brain. What is one book everybody should read on DEI and leadership or?
Okay, so I just got this training, so I really, really love it. It's called Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I think it really speaks to the new type of leadership in this new world. It speaks to being, and I'm paraphrasing, but one must recognize our own fears and shame, and then move from that to vulnerability to share, and then move from that to making courageous steps to act. So when I was talking up through this whole podcast, it's like calling a thing. I like being with my people for whatever reason, whatever the reasons are. Okay, now what is different and how can I make this different a little bit in the workplace? So being vulnerable about that, and then being courageous to actually take the act, take that step, be that mentor, get to know your teammates, etc. So Dare to Lead, I would say right now, is kind of top of line.
Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Okay. Biggest lesson you've learned from your career journey so far? That's a big question, but
people love to share their stories. People love to share their stories. And once they share their stories, some great connection can be made. You know, I get made fun of all the time. I can probably talk to a tree outside and they can tell me about the leaves and the changing of them. But I just love to hear people's stories. It helps connect me as a human, because I may be over here in this lane thinking, you don't know anything about my experience. You don't know my life, as the young kids say. You don't understand none of that. But I have made so many connections with people that don't look like me, that have shared so many things very intimate that lined up with me as well. And I am forever, even if I'm not their friend anymore, I remember that about them and I carry that forward. So that has been such a gift in this work. And I need it in times where times are really, really tough. And I need it when times are great. But sharing stories, hearing stories has just been, it's so basic, right?
Right.
But it has been so critical to my work and my life, if I'm honest.
Foundational, you're right. All right, last question. What would be your go-to advice for someone just starting their career? What's the first thing or a couple things they should think about starting off?
Go-to advice when starting their job, starting a new job?
Starting their career, somebody coming just out of college.
Okay. Since you now have ChatGPT, I've said it like 5 times. I feel like they should sponsor me now. Find out about the mission, vision, and values of the company. Find it out. No one ever told me when I was early in my career, like, what is their mission? Yeah. What is their vision, and what are their values? They're on all the websites. And see if you align with that. If you do not align with that, the young part of your career, I would say start that now, because that can become like memory. Like it just becomes a strong memory muscle. I also say this, wherever you are, try to pick up some learning. Even if you're like, I am at the car wash and I have a degree, why am I washing cars right now? What can you learn from that manager that's running the business? What can you learn from that nonprofit? You know, even though they're underfunded and they're not paying you enough, what can you learn from that executive director or that organization that you're working alongside? All those pieces add up. But for all of these experiences I've had, I don't think I would have, enjoyed what I'm doing so much today, as well as been able to pull from them.
That's a really good one. You can absolutely find value in almost anything you're doing, and it will add up and it will pay off eventually. So don't forget about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I said that was my last question, but my actual last question is, if I wanted to find you, I think you have a book and a podcast, you have a bunch of stuff. I want to find you. Give us a plug about what's going on in your world.
Yes, please follow me. I get super excited talking about this, Brian. I could talk all day, but I won't bore the audience. You can find me at AishaDeBerry.com. That's www.AISHA, D as in David, E, B as in boy, ERRY.com. There you will find information about the things that I do in terms of writing my books, facilitations that I give, just nuggets. We have a newsletter, all the things. And the same for Facebook and Instagram. I'm under Aisha DeBerry.
Okay. All right, Aisha, I really thank you. I have things that I was learning here. I know that people that are listening, watching are going to. I'm so grateful. I'm thankful. This was an amazing 1 hour and 5 minutes or so. Thank you so much. We will be in touch. But once again, I am Brian Bell. This is the Level Up Podcast. We learned a lot today. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much for watching.